Today we have another air and water heater, diesel heater. This one is the Hydro Hybrid 7 kilowatt, and it is from Trails.se or Trales. I'm not entirely sure how you say that, if it's Trails or Trales, but I'm going to go with Trails. Trails.se. SE? That Sweden? I hope it's Sweden, otherwise I'm making a terrible cultural faux pas. This is the box. Yeah, right, let's do this quickly. Air intake, ducting, fuel tank, box of bits. We'll open the box of bits more in a minute. It's stuck to the inside. Why, baby Jesus? Box of bits. The heater itself. It's fucking heavy. Are these putting on weight? Jesus Christ. Wait a minute, hold on. Right, that's an 8 kilowatt. No, that's, you know, a 5 kilowatt body. How much heavier is... Yeah, it's a fair chunk heavier than a standard heater. Anyway, yeah. Like I say, there we go. It's got air intake, exhaust outlet, and 2 waters. Obviously an in water and an out water. Right, let's set that there. What else is in here? We've got a fuel pump and the LCD controller. Right, let's get the rest of this off the bench and then we will get it set up. Right, let's see what's in this box of bits. You know, first thing I like is branding. Someone is actually confident enough to brand things. The only other diesel heater we've had that's had any branding whatsoever is the Lavner. Nobody else everyone else just puts 8 kilowatts on the side of them and is done with it. There's an inside joke there somewhere about 8 kilowatt heaters. Ding! What we got in here? We have an exhaust pipe, a T-piece, a fuel stand pipe if you're going to put that in a tank and draw straight off a vehicle tank. We have fuel line, the fuel line. Some people don't like the green fuel line, but we've done a test on it and we ran a big length of it and it didn't make any difference whatsoever to the functioning of the heater. Other people have commented about its longevity in sunlight, but it shouldn't really be in sunlight. And this one is actually marked 140 to it's either 120 or 170 degrees. I'd be tempted to say 120. Is that better? Yeah, I'm going to go with 120. Negative 40 to 120. Anyway, fuel pipe. Ooh, they're quite nicely machined. These are the barb fittings for the water inlet and outlet by the looks of it. Them there. Vent. Intake filter, that's what I was looking for. Air intake filter. Fuel pump mount. Silencer for the exhaust and the mounting bracketry. Nice T-pieces. If you recall, I'm not going to go and find a clip of it, but the previous air and water heater we had absolutely horrible, and I mean they were fucking dog shite T-pieces for the water line. They were the nastiest T-pieces I had ever seen. Thankfully these are nice plastic, glass reinforced. Yes, they are glass fibre reinforced. We've got wiring loom, which has got plugs for, well, everything I hope. Standard fuel filter and Jubilee clips, etc, etc, etc. We have a water pump. No idling. No idling? I wonder if no idling is a rough translation for do not run dry. Because I don't know how you idle a water pump. Yeah, it must mean no run dry. And water pump wiring. The fixing base plate and a user manual. Oh, that's always handy. Right, things we don't need. Base plate, filter kit, we'll keep the air intake filter, don't need that hose, we don't need exhaust, that bit, keep them, we don't need a standpipe. Shan't need a fuel tank at the moment, goodbye fuel tank. We'll put that somewhere else. Suppose what I should do now is set it all up in some fashion that we may test it and run it and well, first of all, why not, while we've got it here and it's cold, let's have a look inside. Might as well, we're here. Let me just take the top off and disassemble. Okay, ECU's in a fairly standard place. Let's take it out its box. Rubbery bit. I always forget to take the rubber bit off the bottom. Okay, we are out. Oh man, it's heavy. So, first off the bat is, well, the ECU is your fairly typical, am I even in shot? You can see right there. It's just an open backed, unsealed, not waterproof ECU. So bear that in mind, it's not, unlike the Lavener, it's not an enclosed and epoxy, not epoxied, potted ECU. So there's that. The fan, I don't see any balancing springs on it, so unbalanced. But the rest of the heater body, yeah, it looks, it's got a very similar heat exchanger to the last one. I remember the last one being completely flat. This one's actually got a kick. Not as thick, perhaps. Thinner base plate material, but and what appears to be an aluminiumized metal gasket. We won't undo it for fear of leaks before we've even started, so we'll run it before we. Oh, and it's got one of the square temperature sensors. Right, that's an odd kind, and I'm sure I've got another one of them somewhere. Good, if I have to spare. Excellent. Right. And as for connections, you'll have noticed that we've got a multitude of these nice metal screw together. We've got a 4-pin, a 3-pin and a 2-pin. I'm going to hazard a guess that the 2-pin is for the water pump, and perhaps, let's see, is the 3-pin or the 4-pin? Right, I've now lost the remote. There it is. Remote's the 3-pin and the power must be the 4-pin. Right, as I said, we will now set this up in some assembly for testing. I'll bring you back once I'm ready to go. Okay, so who else noticed that the base plate has got 3 tabs and not the usual 4? Then again, it's also got 2 extra holes, so you'd have been kind of humped if you'd wanted to use your original mounting holes anyway. Now I wanted to show the water connections. Now you'll notice these have got double O-ringed and nice long thread, and these also got these lock washers that screw on as well. So when you put them in, you can put it to any orientation and then lock the washer down. I was just going to make a note of what I like to do is apply some red rubber grease to any types of rubber O-rings or anything like that before you insert them, just to help keep them alive a little bit longer, and a little bit of grease on the threads will not hurt either. It also makes it much easier to install them when you install them, because the grease slides nicely and you get a nice smooth installation. So I'm going to grease these up and then install them, and then we'll put water pipes etc. on them and get them up and going. I just thought I would mention that part. We are assembled! Let me run you through what we have. So, main power supply is the battery, and the little power supply keeping the battery topped up and charged. So that is connected to its wiring loom, which I have to say, it's got nice heavy wire in it. I was quite impressed. It's got heavy wire and the all important fuse. That's nice, and it plugs into one of the 2, 3 or 4 pronged ports, I forget which. The 2-pronged port connects to the water pump, and once again, nice heavy wiring. They do supply these little connectors. What you do is you twist your wires together inside that, and then you heat this a bit up in the middle, and it's a blob of solder, and it melts and joins the wires, and then you heat these 2 red bits and they squeeze down, and then it acts like a heat shrink tubing as well. So they are on the end of the pump to connect it to your wiring. It's a non-self-priming pump, so you do need to have this below the water line of your water tank in your your engine, because that's what this is for. This is for preheating engine water. I suppose, yes, of course, we could use it to heat up a coolant tank or our own, or run a heat exchanger, etc. But that is for another day and another thing. So I basically just have my water going into a little tank here. We've got 4.3 litres in the whole system, and that just pumps, well, out of here, through this one, through the pump, into heater, into heat exchanger, out of heat exchanger, and back in the tank. We've got the thermocouple is already in place. I say, got the fuel pump, which brings me to point A. I've received the wrong fuel pump with the heater. So this is a 12 volt heater, and I got a 24 volt pump in my box. We are finally back with the correct water pump. These connections here, these are for my multimeter. I was reading the hertz off of the hertz display, so I could see how fast the pump was going in hertz. I'll give you a clip of that. Can you see? We're going to call that 4.4 hertz. But it is as the way it was before. Fuel pump, no, fuel pump, heater, an arrangement of water setups. Don't worry, I'll unkink this pipe during testing. Yeah, right, so that all works. I have been doing the tests. I added a bit of restriction into the air system. I will elaborate in a moment. The water was fine. That test came out okay, because it's kind of difficult to go wrong. You just measure one temperature and then measure another temperature later on, and that's how much energy was required or used to heat that volume of water up, so that was alright. Did I go over the controls for this here? If not, I'm going to go over them again right now, if I can manage to not drag everything off the bench at the same time. This heater controller is fairly easy to use. Well, I thought it was fairly easy. So we'll start with this one. Inject oil. As you can, well, maybe not guess, but if you press and hold this while the heater is off, it runs off the fuel pump, so you can prime the system. Plateau mode. If you're above 1500 meters, you press and hold that to start the system, and it starts it with a different fuel map for high altitude. Normally you just press and hold this rotary knob and button, that starts it. This one, it says water pump, that turns the water pump on and off when the heater's running. And upgrade is a mode that you activate it and it runs the heater at full power until it gets to, I think it's 90 degrees, and then it'll turn the water pump on automatically for you. And no matter what you set the dial to in that mode, it doesn't matter, it just runs at full power till it heats the water up, basically. So to start it, you just press and hold that button, that goes red, let go, and it fires up. And I'm fairly sure I showed a video of it firing up. So like I say, this one turns the water pump on and off. Will it say? Open water pump's on. I've done that off just now. The twiddly knob, you see the 4, 5, 6, 7, 4, that adjusts that. And upgrade says open water pump, but it's not doing anything because we've not reached the right temperature to do anything. And that's it, that's all there is for the controller. A word of note, I should say, that when you're starting it, don't press any buttons and don't twiddle any things, because there's like a period of time to start where if you touch or do anything, it kind of just doesn't start and gives up. I don't know why, it's maybe a programming bug, but I found that it didn't start there because I pressed buttons and it gave up on its starting procedure. So I have run the tests in which I was supposed to run, and they fucked up the first time. And I don't just mean because we had the wrong pump. This was running the right pump. I just did not bad maths, but bad test. A bad test. Let me bring you in for some numbers. Can you see some of the numbers? Yes, you can. Okay, let's just go through. So then my first test, I took the maximum airspeed, which was 13 meters a second, an input temperature of 10 degrees, and the maximum output temperature that I could find with a probe, which was 120 degrees. That gave the heater an output in kilowatts of 6.5, which is great, you see, because it's supposed to be a 7 kilowatt heater. The only problem with that is more energy out than got put in with diesel, because I worked it out. So using the multimeter in hertz mode clipped across the thing, it measured a hertz of 4.4 hertz at full running power. So that pump is doing 4.4 hertz. It is a 28 mil pump, so that's 0.028 milliliters per stroke. So times that by 4.4, so 0.123 per second, that's milliliters, and then times that by 60, so 7.4 milliliters a minute, or then times that by 60 and you get 443.5 milliliters an hour. Diesel has approximately 37 megajoules per litre, which, well, or roughly half a litre, which is 16.41 megajoules, or 4.56 kilowatt hours of energy from the amount of diesel we put in. So we cannot get any more out of that than 4.56. Otherwise we are breaking over unity and the universe will collapse upon in on itself. So my first set of tests was wrong. Because when you measure the airspeed, you get different airspeeds depending on where you go on the front of the cowling. So depending on where you go in the circle with your anemometer, depends, like you get 8, 7, 10, 13. So I went with 13. Erroneously. Same as the temperature. If you move the temperature probe about, you get like 70 degrees, 65, 85, 120. I went with 120, which was erroneous, and we got all those numbers. So I did the test again, and I got a bit better at averaging the results out. So there was an average air output speed of 11 meters a second. Input temperature, it's got colder because I've got the extractor fan on here, 8.8, and an average output temperature of 85 degrees, giving us a kilowatt hours of 4.2 kilowatt hours, and that is a bit more respectable. That brings us under the 4.56 that it can ever possibly be. Granted, yes, it says it's 7 kilowatts, but we know it's all fucking lies anyways. But 4.4 kilowatt, 4.2 kilowatt hours in the air output, that's absolutely fine for a heater of this size, and well, it is for its size, that's all it can be. The water heater bit, which, as we know, is just a nice little heat sink that's attached to the bottom of the burn chamber area, and a pump, and I've got 4.3-ish litres of water in there. 4.3 litres of water, started at 29, finished at 56 after 5 minutes, is approximately 1.5 kilowatts of heating power. Now, you can't add those two together, the 4.2 and the 1.5, because when you run heating the water up, it brings the output temperature down, so it lowers your air heating output ability, obviously, because you're heating up water as well as air now. You can't do both. So, granted, if you added those two things together, you would get nearly 7, which is still lies and wrong, but that's just the way the Chinese market them, so that's fair enough. We won't hold it against them too much for their slightly exuberant numbers. Well, what can I say about this all-in-one heater? Does it output the advertised power? No. Do any of them put out the advertised power? Not really. Am I happy with its function? Yes. Am I happy with its, well, what the construction that I've seen so far? It's got nice heavy wiring for things. You know, for example, the water pump and the fuel pump. It's got nice, the metal screw together connections for all of that kind of stuff. The fittings for the water pump attachment, or the water side, they've got double O-rings. They all screw together nice. They've got locking rings. It's got a nice large water pump, not like the other water pump that I got that is now seized and broken bits. That's another reason for using coolant in your things. It stops, well, the cheap pumps rusting. I was just using straight water in that other pump in it. Now, its innards have rusted away to nothing. So yeah. The controller's nice. It's easy to use. There's, well, 1, 2, 3, 4. If you call that a button, there's 5 buttons. No temperature control, that's the only thing. It's only power control between, was it 1500 and 7000 watts, but that's fine. The water heating thing works. You set it to auto mode and it heats the water up. Yeah. All in all, it's just a nice little heater. I'll leave the links in the description to where you can get it from, and if there's any other specific tests you'd like me to do on this one, and well, perhaps we'll take it apart in another video. But any questions, comments, etc, etc, if you leave them down below in the comment section. I do try and read all of the comments, and I try and answer the ones that I can answer, except for the ones that are actually spam and trash and people just being assholes. I tend to ignore them. And I suppose that brings us to the end of this video. So, as always, thanks for watching.